This video is going to look at creating graphs and using charts in Google Sheets. And we'll also look at how to create error bars using standard deviations also in Google Sheets. We're going to use this set of data here. It is a completely fictionalized set of data, but it will serve our purpose to help figure out how to do this. So when we're looking at how to graph, we want to be sure that we're graphing our process data and not our raw data. So the first thing is we need to do some processing to figure out what our averages are and how much faith we can put into those averages. And so we're going to start by using some math functions. So when we want Sheets to do math for us, we're going to start by using an equal sign, which indicates that we're going to use some function. In this case, our function is going to be to find an average. Type in the word average, open up parentheses, and highlight whichever numbers need to be averaged. Once you do that, it'll come up with a value. That value often will have more decimal places than you actually need. It is important to be sure that you're consistent with the number of decimal places that you use in your answers. It's also important to be sure that that number of decimal places matches the data that you've taken. So you look at the data that we've used, and none of the pieces of data here have any decimals, which means that we can't know with any certainty any value beyond that. Right now, we have more decimals than that. The way that we can change this is to come up here to the toolbar, and you'll notice there's some that have an increase and decrease function here. And so if you click this direction, it'll add. If you click the other one, it'll remove. The value of the number is still stored within the spreadsheet, but the other decimal places are just hidden. So we're going to go ahead and leave it as a whole number there. And then we want to also do averages for these. You can also go and type those functions in there. If you like the shortcut method, you can come to this corner where there's a little square, and if you click on that square and drag it across the other squares that you would like to add it to, then it'll copy the function into those other squares as well. So these are the different averages. You'll notice that it also kept the same number of decimal places that we had in our original one. Again, if it's still there, it's still hidden, but we're going to be consistent about that. So now that we have our average, we want to know how clustered is that data, how reliable is that data, and one of the ways we can do that is to look at the standard deviation. So again, we're going to tell Google Sheets that we'd like to do math, so we type in the equal sign, and the function that we're going to do is standard deviation. It's going to guess that. If it doesn't, then stdev is the way to indicate that you would like to do a standard deviation. So stdev, open your parentheses. Again, highlight the numbers. Once they've been highlighted, it'll come up with that number. We can again change our number of decimal places up here. After that, we'll go ahead and copy that function to the other cells. And there we already have our process data. And we're going to use this process data to create our graph. Now, because we're wanting to do error bars in Google Sheets, we're going to have to do something that's a little odd. We have to do kind of a workaround. It's not quite as powerful as Excel is, and so there's some functions that we have to do some things to get it to do what we want it to do. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to scroll down here. We're going to use our process data. I've given a list of the steps that we're going to take to create the table that we want on the left side over here. So if you ever want to come back and just look at the list and not listen to the whole video, you can come back to this point. So the first thing is we're going to make an intermediary table, meaning it's a table we're going to use to create the graph that we want, but it's not one that we're going to copy into our lab report. So the first thing it says is put the averages on diagonal. I guess I skipped a step. First, we need to be sure that we have the categories that we're going to be using. So we'll bring those down here. I will tell you that if it's a pure number, sometimes Google Sheets does strange things with the graphs and it makes it a little hard to work with. So I would suggest that, at least for the sake of the intermediary table, that you have something other than just a number in those cells. Then we're going to put our averages in the diagonal. I'm going to put the equal sign and then I'm going to click on that average, because what that will do is it will tell Sheets that whatever is in this cell should be equal to the value of that cell. If we make changes in these cells, it will also change the value in that cell as well. Then, as I said, we're going to create it on a diagonal. So here, I'm going to put the value of the next one. And then we're going to continue that pattern all the way down until we get through all of our data. All right, at this point, it's going to recognize these as different series, which is going to be important. So now that we put the averages in the diagonal, we're going to select the table, this one here, all of our data, and we're going to insert chart. When we do, Google is going to take a guess at what you want. The default often is the bar graph. Now, bar graphs are very good if you have discrete categories. Generally, that would be things like words, maybe a descriptor, color of eyes, or things like that. Since we're not doing that, we're going to want to pick a different type of graph. We're going to want to pick a scatter plot. So if we go over onto setup, or sorry, customize. Nope. It was setup. Under setup, we find the listing here of chart type. Right now it's got columns. We're going to scroll down to where it says scatter plot. And you'll notice that our numbers look like they went away. They haven't gone away. What we're going to need to do next is scroll down to the bottom and check the box that says switch rows and columns. And then we should come up with our lovely dots that we have. Now, right now, our graph looks a little thin, so we're going to create some things on it to be sure we've got good labels. Right now, we don't have our X or Y axis labeled. We don't have a title on it. So we do need to be sure that those items go in there. I don't need the dots at the top, so I'm going to highlight those and then just hit delete so that they go away. Now, when I want to go into the titles, we go here to where it says chart and axis titles. So our chart title is going to be whatever we're truly looking at. In this case, it's often going to be what we're comparing. We're comparing the salt concentration on radical growth. So this would often become the title that I wanted. So I'm going to copy that so that I can come down here and use that to become my title. Chart title, and then we can put it in right there. You are welcome to change fonts, colors, all those sort of things in this area here. If you're okay with what it is, then you can leave it. If not, you can change sizes or make them into different colors, whatever is most appropriate to your graph. After we've done that, we will also want to pick the horizontal axis, and then we will give this a title. So our horizontal one is our X, and this was the concentration of salt solution in grams per milliliter. It's important to include your units in your labels as well. And then we'll go with our vertical axis, which was growth of radical, and that was measured in millimeters. Once we have some labels, now we have a decent looking graph. We're going to move on to some of our next steps. I'm going to make this slightly smaller for a moment just so that we can share our screen a little bit. So if we go over here to our steps, we've got the right chart. Now we're going to go on to the Customize tab and actually start putting our error bars on. So we're going now, we've got Customize and then Series. Under the Series tab, we're going to change off of the Apply to All, and we're going to pick each individual data set. So we're going to go to Data Series 1, so that means we're formatting this lovely blue dot right now. And that's where we're going to put our error bar onto it. We're going to scroll down, and we're going to click on the box that says Error Bars. And that opens up a new thing. Right now it says %, and that's not what we want. We're going to pull down menu and choose Constant. And we get to pick the value. The value that we're going to pick is going to be the value of our standard deviation from earlier, because that tells us how much those values vary. So if we looked at all of our data, it would lie within 12 points above or below that value point. Once we've done that, then it's entered there. So then we're going to come back up and we're going to then pick the next series, data series 2. And now we're doing the same thing. We're going to choose error bars. We're going to change it to constant. We're going to pick our value from over here on the table. 24 was our standard deviation for the second data set. Oops, I didn't. And we're going to repeat this process for all of our different pieces of data. All right, and at this point now we have a graph that has our error bars on it. Again, we can change size and shape so that we can see it better and move it around. So that allows us to be able to look at the certainty of our data based on standard deviations and to look for different patterns. So now you can take this chart and you can copy and paste this into your lab report along with your original data table, the one at the top of the page. Both of those items should be in your data area of your lab. So that will actually be it on this particular video. In the next video, we will look at some different statistical tests and when and how to use them, things like ANOVA, t-test, and Pearson correlations. So until next time, have a lovely day. Bye.